Hey, it's Mrs. Purdy. I'm going to try to do some teaching. So forgive me about this is my basement. It's very dark down here, but I can get privacy and not get interrupted by the dogs, my son, the mailman, whatever. So today we're going to learn about the layers of Earth. I had you do some assignments last week about them. So now I want to make sure you get the most important things and then we can move on to this week's content. All right, so we're going to focus on, I know you can barely see this, but this is our new unit. It's called Earth Systems because we're going to learn everything about what's going on inside of Earth that has an effect on the outside of Earth. Um, so yes, as I said, we're going to focus on the layers inside of Earth, and we're going to dissect each layer to understand what is each layer like? What is each layer's basically their job in creating the outside of Earth? But first, I want to remind you that we've been focused mostly on the, the the outside of Earth, right? So we got to understand the Earth, and I would get my globe out right now. Is I would say it's a sphere, right? And we call it a rock because it is essentially made of rock, just like Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars. All the inner planets are made of rock. But one great thing about our planet is that we have liquid water. Yes, we have an ocean that basically is 75% of what's covering the crust. So when we think of Earth, we think of it as a watery planet. But right now, I need you to visualize if we were to drain all the water outside of Earth, what would we see? We would see crust, rock. Okay. So when we're talking about Earth's crust, we're talking about what is underneath of the water. Okay. And I also don't want you to get confused with the atmosphere because we've talked a lot about that too. So if we were to go up in a plane or up on a mountain, we might be, getting close to the gases that surround our planet. The gases that surround our planet make up the weather, the troposphere, the mesosphere, the stratosphere. So we've got all these layers of the atmosphere, which we know protects us and is one of the reasons we're here on Earth. But we're not talking about the atmosphere with the layers of Earth. We're taking an elevator downstairs underneath of the crust. So we're going to start with the crust, and then we're going to work our way to the core, which I know you guys know probably a lot about already. My son's in second grade. He's already learning about this stuff. So I know you guys have heard this before. So what are we going to focus on? We're going to focus on the layers. We're going to talk about what each layer is made of. We're going to talk about how big each layer is. And we're going to talk about which layer is the most dense. Which layer do you think is the densest layer? Is it the biggest layer? Is it the innermost layer? Is it the layer we live on? Stay tuned to find out. All right, now this is my very basic drawing of the Earth layers. I will be flipping the camera around and show you some graphics, okay? But first, let's just talk about the layers of the Earth with Miss Purdy's really simplistic drawing, okay? We can break down Earth's layers into four main parts. Now, mind you, I could take each one of these layers and divide them even more, but for the beginning purposes, we're just going to say Earth's outermost layer is the crust. It's what we live on, okay? And it's the smallest, least dense layer. So all of the lightest material on our planet is at the top of it, and it's in the crust. And we can even break down crust into two types. Who knows? Oceanic and continental. Very good. Which one do you think is more dense? The oceanic or the continental crust? It's the oceanic. Why? Because it's got all that layers of sediment from the ocean and all that stuff that just settles on the bottom of the ocean floor. So oceanic crust is denser. Just file that away for later. So we live on what's called the lithosphere. We'll talk more about that later in the week because when we get to soil, we'll have to talk about the importance of taking care of our lithosphere because this one little tiny layer is what we all live on and depend on for survival. Yes, you always say we need plants. Well, plants need soil, All right, and where does soil come from? It comes from the earth. And we'll get to all that next week about how does the rock cycle turn rocks into soil so that we can plant crops in it so we can eat, right? But we'll get to that later. So anyway, we live on the outermost layer. It's called the crust. There's two different kinds of crust. You got the oceanic crust. That's what's at the bottom of the ocean. And then you have continental crust. So which layer do we live on? We live on the crust, we live on the outermost layer, and it is mostly the continental crust. I don't live in the middle of the ocean. I don't know about you. All right, so if we were to dig down underneath of our crust, we would be in what's called the mantle. This is the biggest portion. That's where you see the majority of spaces in the mantle. Nobody's ever been down there. But we use all kinds of sophisticated techniques to figure out what's down there. But in the mantle is what we call hot molten magma. Magma is just basically lava that's inside the earth that hasn't come out yet. So in the mantle, we're going to have a whole day just talking about convection currents. But I've been trying to plant those seeds of convection currents in your brains for a while now. Why? Because I knew when we got to this unit, you could make connections from our heat unit. We talked about convection currents. We talked about it a little bit in matter when we talked about boiling water. Convection currents are basically just kind of like boiling magma. There's so much heat and pressure from Earth's core that it heats up the magma in the mantle. And that, my friends, is what causes the continents to move. And I say it like that because I'm going to make you watch this video. It's already on your Nearpod. And it's this guy, he's got a Scottish accent, and he says it's ultimately what causes the continents to move. And yes, the continents are moving because of all the heat and pressure going on in the mantle. So that's what the mantle's like. The mantle is dense because it's so large, but it's not the densest layer. It's the largest layer, but not the densest. It's pretty dense in comparison to the crust. Okay, so the crust is the lightest layer. Mantle is more dense than that. Let's go to our next layer, which is the outer core. Ooh, the mysterious and fascinating outer core. They say that it's a liquid metal and it's spinning. It's spinning, and it's what's causing Earth's force field. So that's pretty amazing. I've been trying to learn and teach myself about that, learning from physicists, explaining to me why we have a magnetic force field that keeps us protected from the sun's bad radiation. Outer core is what they think is responsible for it. It's turning and it's creating this magnetic force field that protects Earth. It's pretty amazing. Next layer, the inner core. So far we have the crust, the mantle, outer core, inner core. Inner core is the densest layer. It's the heaviest. They have this theory that when Earth was forming and cooling, all the densest materials sink to the center, solidified, and supposedly it's hot as the sun down there, and that's what creates all this heat and pressure. So that is, in a nutshell, the layers of the earth explained by Miss Purdy. I hope that was helpful. I'm going to turn the camera around so you're not going to see my face anymore, but you're going to hear my voice. Oh, yay. All right.